The bedroom was dark except for the blue glow from Robert's phone. Amelia lay on her side, watching her husband's back as he scrolled through whatever was more important than his wife of 5 years. She had tried again tonight. A gentle touch on his shoulder, a soft kiss on his neck, her hand sliding across his chest. Just like the previous 30 times this month, he had pulled away. "Not tonight, baby. I'm exhausted," he had mumbled, not even looking at her. Exhausted. The same excuse he had given her yesterday. And the day before that. And every day for the past month. Amelia stared at the ceiling, counting the rejections in her head. 30 times in 30 days. She used to think she was lucky to have married such a successful man. Robert Brooks, the real estate developer who could charm anyone into buying property they didn't need. But lately he couldn't even be bothered to charm his own wife. She listened to his breathing, waiting for the deep, steady rhythm that would tell her he was asleep. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Finally, his arm relaxed and the phone slipped slightly in his hand. Amelia held her breath and waited another 5 minutes to be sure. Moving like a cat, she slid closer to him and carefully angled the phone toward her. The screen was still lit, showing a text conversation. At first, she thought it might be work. Robert often stayed up late dealing with difficult clients. But as her eyes focused on the messages, her blood turned to ice. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Same time?" The message wasn't from a client. It was from someone named Stella, and there was a heart emoji next to her name. Amelia's hands started shaking as she scrolled up to read more messages. "Tonight was amazing. Your wife has no idea what she's missing." "I know. She's been trying to, but I just can't anymore. Not when I have you." "Good. Save all that energy for me. I need you, Robert." The phone almost slipped from Amelia's trembling fingers. She had to bite her lip to keep from making a sound. Every rejection, every "I'm too tired," every "maybe tomorrow," suddenly made perfect sense. He wasn't too tired. He was getting his needs met somewhere else. She scrolled further back, her heart breaking with each message. Photos that made her stomach turn. Plans for hotel meetings. Love messages that should have been meant for her. The affair had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of rejection. 8 months of her thinking something was wrong with her. "Robert?" she whispered softly, testing if he was really asleep. He didn't move. She scrolled back to the most recent messages, taking pictures with her own phone. Her marketing background had taught her to document everything, and right now, those skills were the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. The last message from Stella was sent just an hour ago. "Sweet dreams, my love. Tell your wife you have an early meeting tomorrow. I'll be waiting in our usual room." Our usual room. They had a usual room. Amelia carefully placed Robert's phone back in his hand and slid away from him. She went to the bathroom and closed the door before allowing herself to break down. Silent tears streamed down her face as she stared at herself in the mirror. Her dark skin looked gray under the bathroom lights. Her usually bright eyes were dull with pain. She was beautiful, successful, intelligent, and loving. So why wasn't she enough for her own husband? But as she wiped her tears, something else started growing inside her chest. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was anger. Pure cold anger. Robert had made her feel unwanted, undesirable, and broken for months. He had let her blame herself for their lack of intimacy. He had watched her try over and over again, knowing he was going to reject her because he was saving himself for another woman. Amelia looked at her reflection again. This time she saw something different. She saw a woman who had been played for a fool, but who was done being fooled. She saw a woman who was about to take back her power. 30 times, she whispered to her reflection. "You rejected me 30 times this month, Robert. But tomorrow I'm going to reject this whole marriage." She spent the rest of the night wide awake, planning. By morning, she had made her decision. She wasn't going to scream or cry or beg him to explain. She wasn't going to give him the chance to lie his way out of this or convince her to forgive him. Robert Brooks was about to learn that rejecting the wrong woman could cost him everything. As the sun rose, Amelia got up and started getting ready for work, acting like nothing had changed. But inside, everything had changed. The devoted wife was gone. In her place was a woman with a mission. Amelia sat in her car outside her office building, staring at the photos on her phone. In the bright morning light, the evidence of Robert's betrayal felt even more real. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold clarity that surprised her. She had always been the strong one in their relationship. When Robert's business struggled in the early years, she had worked extra hours to help pay their bills. When he doubted himself, she built him up. When he wanted to expand his company, she had encouraged him and helped him plan. She had been his biggest supporter, his safe place, his home. And this was how he repaid her. Amelia scrolled through more of the messages she had photographed. The timestamps told a story that made her stomach turn. On their anniversary 3 months ago, when Robert claimed he was too sick for intimacy, he had been texting Stella about meeting her at a hotel. On Amelia's birthday, when he said he was too stressed about work, he had spent the evening sending love messages to his secretary. His secretary. Of course it was his secretary. Amelia had met Stella Martinez several times at company events. She was young, maybe 28, with long blonde hair and a fake sweet smile. Amelia had actually felt sorry for her, thinking she seemed lonely and trying to be friendly. Now she realized Stella had been studying her, probably laughing at how clueless Robert's wife was. The worst part wasn't even the affair itself. It was how Robert had made her doubt herself. How many nights had she lain in bed wondering what was wrong with her? How many times had she bought new lingerie, trying to spark his interest? How many times had she suggested date nights or romantic getaways, only to have him find excuses? She had started exercising more, thinking maybe he wasn't attracted to her anymore. She had read articles about keeping marriages fresh and tried to implement their suggestions. She had even considered couples therapy, thinking their intimacy problems were something they could work through together. But there was no they to work on. There was just Robert, lying to her face every single day while carrying on with another woman. Amelia's phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Have an early meeting today. Don't wait up for dinner tonight. The meeting with Stella, just like she had read in their messages. Amelia typed back, okay honey. Work hard. Love you. The lie came easily now. If Robert could pretend for 8 months, she could pretend long enough to plan her exit properly. She wasn't going to be the woman who fell apart and made emotional decisions. She was going to be smart about this. But first she needed someone to talk to. Someone she could trust completely. Amelia drove to her sister-in-law Nina's house instead of going to her office. Nina was Robert's younger sister, but she and Amelia had become best friends over the years. If anyone would understand how serious this was, it would be Nina. Nina answered the door in her scrubs, about to leave for her shift at the hospital. Amelia? What are you doing here so early? I need to talk to you. It's important. Nina took one look at Amelia's face and called in sick to work. They sat in Nina's kitchen while Amelia showed her the evidence. Nina's face went through the same emotions Amelia had experienced: shock, disbelief, and finally, anger. That bastard, Nina whispered, staring at the photos. I can't believe my own brother would do this to you. What should I do? Amelia asked, though she already knew the answer. Divorce him, Nina said without hesitation. Take him for everything he's worth. But what if he wants to work things out? What if he's sorry? Nina grabbed Amelia's hands across the table. Amelia, look at these messages. This isn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This is 8 months of planned betrayal. He's been lying to you every single day. And look at what he said about you to her. He doesn't respect you. He doesn't love you. Not the way you deserve. Amelia knew Nina was right. The Robert in those messages wasn't the man she thought she married. He was cold and dismissive when talking about her. He complained about her to his affair partner. He had turned their marriage into a joke. I won't take him back, Amelia said finally. Even if he begs. Even if he promises to change. I'm done. Good, Nina said firmly. Now what's your plan? That was the question Amelia had been thinking about all night. She couldn't just walk away from 5 years of marriage without protecting herself. Robert's business was successful now, partly because of her support and sacrifice. She deserved her fair share. But more than that, she deserved justice. I'm going to gather more evidence, Amelia said. I'm going to hire a private investigator and a divorce lawyer. I'm going to be prepared for whatever he tries to pull. And then I'm going to make sure he loses everything that matters to him. What about Stella? Amelia's jaw tightened. She's about to learn that sleeping with married men has consequences. Nina smiled for the first time since Amelia had arrived. I love this side of you. Robert has no idea what's coming. As Amelia drove to work later that morning, she felt different. The woman who had cried silently in the bathroom was gone. In her place was someone stronger, smarter, and absolutely determined to win. Amelia walked into her marketing firm's office with her head held high, greeting her colleagues with the same professional smile she always wore. Nobody could tell that her world had exploded 12 hours ago. She had perfected the art of compartmentalizing, a skill that served her well in client presentations and would now serve her in the most important project of her life. Her assistant handed her a stack of messages and her morning coffee. "Your husband called," she said with a smile. "He wanted to confirm your dinner reservations for Friday night." Dinner reservations. Another lie. Amelia checked her phone and saw no missed calls from Robert. He had probably called her office instead of her cell phone deliberately, knowing she would get the message but wouldn't be able to question him about it immediately. Even his lies were calculated. "Thank you," Amelia said calmly. "Please call and cancel those reservations." She closed her office door and opened her laptop. Before she did anything else, she needed to secure her own finances. Amelia had always been careful with money, keeping her own savings account separate from their joint accounts. Robert made more money, but she had been smart about building her own financial security. First, she moved most of her personal savings to a new account at a different bank. Then she printed out 5 years of bank statements from their joint accounts, documenting the large cash withdrawals and credit card charges that she now realized were probably related to his affair. Hotel bills, expensive restaurants, jewelry purchases that she had never received. Next, she started researching divorce lawyers. Nina had been right about needing legal help, but Amelia wanted the best. She made appointments with 3 different attorneys for the following week, telling each office that she needed someone experienced in high-asset divorces. By lunchtime, she had a plan forming. But she needed more than just the text messages. She needed proof that would hold up in court and leave Robert with no way to deny what he had done. Amelia called a private investigation firm that her company had used for background checks on potential business partners. When she explained what she needed, the receptionist transferred her to James Patterson, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. "Mrs. Brooks," James said during their phone consultation, "I understand this is a difficult time. What kind of evidence are you looking for?" "Everything," Amelia said firmly. "Photos, financial records, witness statements. I want to know every detail of this affair. How long it's been going on, where they meet, how much money he spent on her. Everything." "That's thorough. Most clients just want proof that an affair is happening." "I'm not most clients," Amelia replied. "This man has been lying to me for 8 months while making me feel like something was wrong with me. I want documentation of every lie." James's voice warmed with approval. "I can work with that. When can we meet in person?" They scheduled a meeting for that evening. Amelia would have to lie to Robert about where she was going, but she was discovering that lying was easier than she had expected. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normal work activities. Amelia attended meetings, reviewed campaign proposals, and managed her team exactly as she always did. But underneath the professional exterior, her mind was constantly working, planning her next moves. At 5 o'clock she texted Robert, "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." His response came immediately, "Me too. Big project deadline." Big project deadline. Amelia almost laughed. She knew exactly what his big project was, and it wasn't work-related. James Patterson's office was in a modern building downtown. He was a tall, serious man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. His office walls were covered with licenses and certificates, but also with thank you letters from grateful clients. "Before we start," James said, "I want you to understand what this process might involve. Infidelity investigations can uncover things that are painful to see. Are you prepared for that?" "I've already seen enough to know my marriage is over," Amelia said. "Now I need ammunition for the divorce." James nodded and opened a new file. "Tell me everything you know." Amelia showed him the photos of the text messages and told him about Robert's pattern of rejection and lies. James took detailed notes, asking clarifying questions about Robert's schedule, habits, and the woman involved. "Stella Martinez," he repeated, writing down the name. "She works at his company?" "She's his secretary. Has been for about a year, which means the affair started pretty soon after he hired her. That's important. If he hired her with the intention of having an affair, or if he used his position as her boss to pressure her into a relationship, that could affect the divorce settlement and potentially create legal problems for his business." Amelia hadn't thought about that angle. "What do you mean?" "Sexual harassment lawsuits. If he was using company resources for personal relationships, or if he was making her job security dependent on the affair, your husband could be facing more than just divorce court." The idea that Robert might face professional consequences for his choices gave Amelia a grim satisfaction. He had built his success on her support and sacrifice. If his own poor decisions brought that success crashing down, it would be perfect justice. "How long will you need to gather evidence?" she asked. "Give me 2 weeks. By then I'll have a complete picture of their relationship, including financial documentation and photographic evidence. And they won't know they're being watched? Mrs. Brooks, I've been doing this for 15 years. Your husband and his girlfriend will have no idea they're under surveillance. As Amelia drove home, she felt a sense of calm settling over her. For the first time in months, she was taking action instead of just hoping things would get better. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the one in control. When she got home, Robert's car wasn't in the driveway. Of course it wasn't. He was probably at a hotel with Stella, doing the things he refused to do with his own wife. Amelia made herself dinner, took a long bath, and went to bed in the guest room. She told herself it was because she didn't want to share a bed with a cheater, but the truth was simpler. She couldn't bear to lie next to him and pretend everything was normal. Tomorrow she would continue playing the role of the oblivious wife. But every day would bring her closer to the moment when she could finally drop the act and show Robert exactly what he had lost. 2 weeks passed like a carefully choreographed dance. Every morning, Amelia kissed Robert goodbye and wished him a good day at work. Every evening, she listened to his stories about difficult clients and demanding projects, knowing they were lies. She had become an expert at nodding sympathetically while mentally cataloging each deception. Robert, meanwhile, seemed more relaxed than he had been in months. He was getting what he wanted from Stella and a peaceful home life with Amelia, who had stopped trying to initiate intimacy. In his mind, he probably thought he had the perfect situation. 2 women who served different purposes in his life, and neither one causing him any stress. He had no idea that his wife was building a case against him that would destroy everything he cared about. James Patterson called Amelia every few days with updates. The private investigator was thorough and professional, but also clearly invested in getting justice for his client. He had been watching Robert and Stella for 2 weeks, and the evidence he was gathering was overwhelming. They meet 3 times a week, James reported during one of their phone calls. Tuesday and Thursday lunches at the Marriott downtown, and Friday evening at a different hotel. He's spending approximately $800 per week on hotels, meals, and gifts for her. $800 a week. Over 8 months, that was more than $25,000 of their money that Robert had spent on his affair. Money that could have gone toward the vacation Amelia had been asking for, or the kitchen renovation she wanted, or simply their savings for the future. What kind of gifts? Amelia asked. Jewelry mostly. Last week he bought her a diamond bracelet that cost $3,000. He paid for it with the credit card linked to your joint account. Amelia closed her eyes. For their last anniversary, Robert had given her flowers from the grocery store and claimed money was tight because of a slow season at work. But he could spend $3,000 on jewelry for his secretary. I have photographs of all the transactions, James continued. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry store surveillance footage. And I've been documenting their physical relationship as well. What do you mean? Photos of them entering and leaving hotels together. Kissing in his car. Nothing inappropriate, but clear evidence of an intimate relationship. Your divorce attorney will have everything she needs. Amelia had met with Trevor Johnson, a divorce lawyer Nina had recommended. Trevor specialized in high-asset divorces and had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. When Amelia had shown him the initial evidence, his eyes had lit up like a predator spotting easy prey. Adultery, financial misconduct, emotional abandonment, Trevor had said, checking items off on his fingers. Mrs. Brooks, your husband has basically gift-wrapped his assets and handed them to you. Now, with James's investigation nearing completion, Amelia was ready to move to the next phase of her plan. But first, she wanted to see the evidence for herself. James had suggested she observe one of Robert's meetings with Stella, just so she could witness the reality of their relationship with her own eyes. It would be painful, but it would also eliminate any lingering doubt or hope she might have about her marriage. On a Thursday afternoon, Amelia told her office she had a client meeting and drove to the Marriott downtown. James had given her Robert's usual room number and timing. She positioned herself in the hotel bar where she could see the elevators and waited. At exactly 1:15 she saw Stella walk through the lobby. She was wearing a red dress that Amelia recognized as expensive, probably another gift from Robert. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly, and she moved with the confidence of a woman who thought she was getting away with something. 10 minutes later, Robert appeared. He looked around nervously before heading to the elevators, clearly worried about being seen. When the elevator doors closed behind him, Amelia felt sick to her stomach. She waited 30 minutes just to prove to herself that this was really happening. When Robert and Stella emerged together, laughing and touching each other casually, Amelia's last hope died. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was a full relationship, complete with inside jokes and comfortable intimacy. The way Robert looked at Stella was the way he used to look at Amelia in the early days of their marriage. Like she was the most interesting person in the world. Like she was beautiful and desirable and worth his full attention. When had he stopped looking at Amelia that way? When had she become someone to tolerate instead of someone to treasure? As she watched them part ways in the parking garage, with a kiss that lasted longer than any goodbye Robert had given his wife in months, Amelia felt something shift inside her chest. The last pieces of her heart that had been holding on to hope finally hardened into determination. She drove back to her office and called Trevor Johnson. "I'm ready," she said when he answered. "Ready for what, Mrs. Brooks?" "Ready to file for divorce." "How quickly can we move?" "With the evidence you have?" "Very quickly. I can have papers drawn up by tomorrow and served by the end of the week." "Do it." That evening, Robert came home with Chinese takeout, acting like the thoughtful husband bringing dinner for his hard-working wife. Amelia smiled and thanked him, playing her role perfectly one more time. "How was your day?" she asked, the same question she had asked him every day for 5 years. "Busy," he said, the same answer he always gave when he was lying. "Lots of difficult clients." "How about you?" "Productive," Amelia replied. "I made some important decisions about the future." Robert nodded absently, already reaching for his phone to check messages from Stella. If only he knew that his future was about to change completely. The next 3 days were the hardest of Amelia's life. She had to continue pretending to be the loving, oblivious wife while divorce papers were being prepared and a process server was being arranged. Every conversation with Robert felt like walking through a minefield. She was terrified he would notice something different about her behavior, or that James Patterson would be spotted during his surveillance. But Robert was too distracted by his double life to pay close attention to his wife. He was juggling text messages from Stella, lies about his schedule, and the growing confidence that came from believing he was getting away with everything. On Wednesday morning, he announced that he would be working late again. "Another project deadline?" Amelia asked, pouring his coffee. "You know how it is," Robert said, already checking his phone. "If I want to keep us in this lifestyle, I have to put in the hours." The lifestyle he was referring to included their beautiful home, Amelia's car, and their joint savings account. All things that Amelia had helped build through her own career success and financial contributions. But in Robert's mind, he was the provider, and she was just lucky to benefit from his hard work. "I appreciate everything you do for us," Amelia said, meaning every word in a way he would never understand. After Robert left for work, Amelia called Trevor Johnson for a final update. "The papers are ready," he said. "My process server will be at his office at 5 o'clock today. Are you sure you want to do it this way?" Amelia had specifically requested that Robert be served at work, during business hours, when Stella and his other employees would be there to witness it. She wanted his professional and personal humiliation to happen simultaneously. "I'm sure," she said. "What happens after he's served?" "He'll have 30 days to respond, but given the evidence we have, I expect he'll want to settle quickly. Men like your husband usually don't want their affairs exposed in court proceedings." "And if he tries to contest it?" "Mrs. Brooks, with what we have on him, contesting this divorce would be professional suicide. He's been stealing from your joint accounts to fund an affair with his employee. Any judge would award you at least 60% of marital assets, possibly more." 60%. After 5 years of supporting Robert's dreams and building their life together, Amelia would walk away with the majority of their wealth. It seemed fair, considering he had stolen so much more than money from her. That afternoon, Amelia left work early and drove to Nina's house. She didn't want to be home when Robert received the papers and called her in a panic. She needed to be somewhere safe, with someone who understood what she was going through. Nina opened a bottle of wine while they waited. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Terrified," Amelia admitted. "What if he convinces me to take him back? What if he makes promises and I believe them?" "Then you remember these," Nina said, pointing to the printed photos from James Patterson's investigation. The images told the story of 8 months of betrayal better than any words could. At exactly 5:15, Amelia's phone started ringing. Robert's name appeared on the screen, but she didn't answer. 2 minutes later, he called again. Then again. By 5:30, he had called 7 times and sent a dozen text messages. "Amelia, call me back right now. What the hell is this? You can't be serious about this. We need to talk immediately." The messages got increasingly desperate as the evening went on. Robert was clearly panicking, realizing that his perfect setup was collapsing. Amelia read each message with growing satisfaction, but she didn't respond to any of them. At 8 o'clock, she heard a car in Nina's driveway. Through the window, they could see Robert's BMW parked behind Amelia's car. He had figured out where she was hiding. "You don't have to talk to him," Nina said firmly. "Yes, I do," Amelia replied. "But not alone." They walked to the front door together. Robert was pacing on the porch, still in his work clothes but looking completely disheveled. His hair was messy, his tie was loose, and his face was red with anger and panic. "Amelia," he said the moment she opened the door. "Thank God. We need to talk about this misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Amelia said calmly. "I know about Stella." Robert's face went white. For a moment, he looked like he might deny it, but then he seemed to remember the evidence that had been included with the divorce papers. "It's not what you think," he said, switching tactics. "It's been over for months." It meant nothing. Over for months? Amelia pulled out her phone and showed him a screenshot of the text messages from the night before. "These are from last night, Robert. You told her you loved her and couldn't wait to see her today. How did you? Who's been spying on me? I hired a private investigator. James Patterson. He's been documenting your affair for 2 weeks. Hotel visits, gift purchases, intimate text messages. Everything." Robert staggered slightly, leaning against the door frame. "Amelia, please. I know this looks bad, but I can explain everything. I love you. I've always loved you. Stella was just a distraction. A mistake. For 8 months. It wasn't supposed to go on this long. I tried to end it, but she kept pushing and I was weak. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Amelia looked at this man she had loved for 7 years, married for 5, and felt nothing but disgust. Even now, caught red-handed with overwhelming evidence, he was trying to manipulate her. Blaming Stella, claiming it was shorter than it was, calling it a mistake instead of a choice. "I rejected intimacy with you 30 times last month because I was getting it from her," Robert continued desperately. "But that's over now. I choose you. I've always chosen you." "No," Amelia said quietly. "You chose her. Every time you lied to me, every time you rejected me, every time you spent our money on her. You chose her. Now I'm choosing myself. Amelia, please don't do this. Think about what we built together. Think about our future." "I am thinking about my future," she replied. "And you're not in it." She closed the door in his face and locked it. Robert pounded on the door for 10 minutes, alternating between apologies and threats, before finally giving up and driving away. Amelia collapsed on Nina's couch, shaking with adrenaline and relief. She had done it. She had looked her lying, cheating husband in the eye and refused to be manipulated. The hardest part was over. Now all she had to do was wait for justice to be served. The weekend after Robert was served with divorce papers was the longest of Amelia's life. He called and texted constantly, sent flowers to her office, and even showed up at her apartment building. She had moved in with Nina temporarily. Each contact attempt was documented by Trevor Johnson as evidence of harassment, but emotionally, it was exhausting. Robert's messages ran the full spectrum of manipulation tactics. He apologized, he blamed Stella for seducing him, he promised to go to therapy, he threatened to fight the divorce, and he even claimed he was having a nervous breakdown without her. But notably absent from any of his messages was the word, no. He never once denied the affair or claimed the evidence was false. On Monday morning, Amelia returned to work determined to focus on something other than her crumbling marriage. Her colleagues had noticed she seemed stressed, but she had told them only that she was dealing with some personal issues. The marketing world was small, and she didn't want word of her divorce spreading before she was ready. Her assistant buzzed her intercom around 10 o'clock. "Mrs. Brooks? There's a woman here to see you. She says it's about your husband." Amelia's blood ran cold. Only one woman would want to discuss Robert with her. "Send her in." Stella Martinez walked into Amelia's office wearing a black dress and designer heels that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked nervous but determined, clutching a small purse with white knuckles. "Mrs. Brooks," Stella said, closing the door behind her. "Thank you for seeing me." "I didn't really have a choice," Amelia replied evenly. "You're here now. What do you want?" Stella sat down across from Amelia's desk, crossing her legs and trying to project confidence. But Amelia could see through the act. The other woman was scared. "I want to talk about Robert," Stella said. "About the situation." "What situation would that be?" "The divorce. He told me you filed papers." "He told you correctly." Stella leaned forward, her mask slipping slightly. "Mrs. Brooks." "Amelia." I think there's been a misunderstanding. Robert and I were just friends. Close friends, but nothing inappropriate. Amelia opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder of photographs that James Patterson had provided. She spread them across her desk like playing cards. Robert and Stella kissing in his car, entering hotels together, holding hands in restaurants. These photos suggest otherwise, Amelia said calmly. Stella's face went pale as she looked at the evidence. Those aren't, we were just 8 months, Amelia continued. $25,000 spent on hotels and gifts. 3 visits per week. Text messages saying I love you, and discussing how clueless his wife is. He showed you our messages? He didn't have to. I found them myself. Stella was quiet for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out how to handle a situation she hadn't expected. Finally, she tried a different approach. Look, she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. Robert and I are in love. He's going to leave you anyway. This divorce is just speeding up the inevitable. Is that what he told you? He told me you two have been unhappy for years. That your marriage has been over in everything but name. He said he was only staying because he felt guilty about leaving you. Amelia almost laughed. The lies Robert had told Stella were almost as impressive as the lies he had told his wife. And you believed him? Why wouldn't I? He's been miserable at home. He told me you two haven't been intimate in months. We haven't been intimate because he's been rejecting me in favor of you, Amelia said bluntly. I tried to save our marriage for months while he was sneaking around with his secretary. Stella's confident facade cracked a little more. That's not? He said you weren't interested anymore. Stella, everything Robert told you about our marriage was a lie. Just like everything he told me about working late was a lie. Do you really think a man who lies to his wife for 8 months is going to be honest with his mistress? The word mistress hit Stella like a slap. She flinched and looked away from the photos. What do you want? Stella asked finally. I want you to understand something, Amelia said, gathering up the photos. Robert isn't leaving me for you. He's not choosing you over me. I'm choosing to leave him because he's a liar and a cheat. And once this divorce is final and he loses half his assets, you're going to discover exactly how much his promises are worth. He loves me. He's using you. Just like he used me. Stella stood up abruptly, her composure finally breaking completely. You're wrong. Robert and I have something real. Something you obviously couldn't give him. What we had was real too, Amelia replied. Until he decided to throw it away for someone who would believe his lies and ask for nothing in return. After Stella left, Amelia called James Patterson. I need to know everything about Stella Martinez, she said. Personal history, financial situation, family background. Everything. Any particular reason? She just visited me at my office. I think she's planning to fight for Robert once she realizes he's about to lose everything. I want to be prepared. I'll have a full report by tomorrow. That evening, Nina helped Amelia move the last of her belongings out of the house she had shared with Robert. They worked quickly and efficiently, taking only what was clearly Amelia's. Everything else could be divided up by the lawyers. As they loaded the final box into Nina's car, Amelia took one last look at the house where she had thought she would raise children and grow old with the man she loved. Now it was just a building full of memories she wanted to forget. Any regrets? Nina asked gently. Only one, Amelia replied. I regret not finding out about the affair sooner. I could have saved myself months of wondering what was wrong with me. As they drove away, Amelia felt lighter than she had in months. The performance was over. She was done pretending to be someone she wasn't, done accepting crumbs from someone who should have been giving her everything. Now it was time for Robert and Stella to learn what real consequences looked like. James Patterson's report on Stella Martinez arrived the next morning, and it painted a picture that didn't surprise Amelia at all. Stella was 28, had been married briefly in her early 20s, and had a pattern of relationships with older, financially successful men. She had worked for 3 different companies in the past 5 years, leaving each job under questionable circumstances. Most importantly, she was in significant debt. Credit cards, student loans, and a car payment that was more than she could afford on her secretary's salary. Robert's expensive gifts and expensive hotels were probably the most luxury she had ever experienced. She's a gold digger, Nina said bluntly when Amelia showed her the report. And she picked the wrong mark. She doesn't know that yet, Amelia replied. In her mind, Robert is successful and about to be single. She probably thinks she won. That afternoon, Trevor Johnson called with an update on the divorce proceedings. Robert's attorney wants to meet, he said. They're proposing a 50-50 split of assets and shared custody of any future children. Future children? Apparently Robert is claiming you two were trying to start a family and this divorce is just a temporary emotional reaction to his indiscretion. Amelia nearly choked on her coffee. Indiscretion? Is that what he's calling 8 months of affair? His lawyer is trying to frame it as a midlife crisis and a one-time mistake. They want to argue for reconciliation rather than divorce. Absolutely not. We proceed as planned. I thought you'd say that. I've scheduled a meeting for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Robert and his attorney will present their settlement offer and we'll present ours. Our offer. 70% of marital assets including the house and his business interests, plus spousal support for 5 years. Amelia smiled. I like our offer better. The meeting was held in Trevor's conference room, a space designed to intimidate with its floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture. Robert arrived with his attorney, David Chin, a nervous-looking man who clearly knew his client had a weak case. Robert looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was messy, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He kept glancing at Amelia like he was expecting her to suddenly forgive him and call off the whole thing. Mrs. Brooks, David Chin began, my client wants you to know how deeply sorry he is for his behavior. He's prepared to do whatever it takes to save his marriage. Mr. Chin, Trevor replied smoothly, my client is not interested in saving her marriage. She's interested in ending it as quickly and favorably as possible. Robert leaned forward desperately. Amelia, please, can we talk privately? Just for 5 minutes? Anything you want to say to my client can be said in front of her attorney, Trevor said before Amelia could respond. I love you, Robert said, staring at Amelia with what looked like genuine pain in his eyes. I know I messed up, but I love you. What I had with Stella was nothing. It was just physical. It meant nothing. It meant enough for you to lie to me for 8 months, Amelia replied calmly. It meant enough for you to spend $25,000 of our money on her. It meant enough for you to reject intimacy with your wife 30 times in 1 month. Robert flinched at each point, but he kept trying. I was confused. I was stupid. But I choose you, Amelia. I choose our marriage. You chose her, Amelia said firmly. Every single day for 8 months you chose her. The only reason you want me back now is because you're about to lose everything. David Chin cleared his throat. Perhaps we could discuss the settlement terms? Trevor opened his folder. My client is seeking 70% of marital assets, including the family home, Mr. Brooks' business interests, and all joint investments. She's also seeking spousal support in the amount of $5,000 per month for 5 years. That's ridiculous, David Chin sputtered. My client built his business before the marriage. With significant financial and emotional support from Mrs. Brooks, Trevor countered. She worked extra hours to support the household while he established his company. She provided the stability that allowed him to take business risks. And she sacrificed her own career advancement to support his goals. All of which was true. Amelia had given up a promotion that would have required travel so that Robert could focus on building his company. She had worked overtime to help pay their bills during the slow early years. She had been his partner in every sense of the word. Furthermore, Trevor continued, Mr. Brooks has been stealing from their joint accounts to fund his affair. Under state law, that constitutes financial misconduct and justifies an unequal distribution of assets. Robert's face was getting redder with each word. I wasn't stealing. That was my money too. Money you spent on hotels and gifts for your mistress while telling your wife you couldn't afford a vacation, Trevor said smoothly. I think any judge would consider that theft. What if we agree to 60%? David Chin asked desperately. 70%, Trevor replied. Plus the spousal support. Plus Mr. Brooks pays all legal fees for both parties. And if we don't agree? Then we go to trial where all of this evidence becomes public record. Including the photographs, text messages, and financial records showing exactly how Mr. Brooks spent his time and money for the past 8 months. The threat of public exposure was the final blow. Robert's business depended on his reputation in the community. If his clients and competitors learned about his affair, especially one with his own employee, it could destroy everything he had worked for. I need to discuss this with my client, David Chin said weakly. You have 24 hours, Trevor replied. After that, the offer changes to 80%. As they prepared to leave, Robert made one last desperate attempt. Amelia, what about Stella? She's been calling me constantly since you filed. She's talking about us getting married, having a future together. But I don't want that. I want you. Amelia looked at her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, with something approaching pity. Robert, you destroyed our marriage for someone who was only interested in your money and status. Now that you're about to lose both, she'll probably leave you too. That's what you chose. That's what you deserve. She walked out of the conference room without looking back. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt truly free. 24 hours later, Robert accepted the settlement offer. Trevor Johnson called Amelia at work with the news, and she had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry tears of relief and victory. He's also agreed to move out of the house immediately, Trevor added. You can move back in this weekend if you want. What about Stella? That's where it gets interesting. Apparently, she's been pressuring him to make their relationship public now that he's getting divorced. She wants him to introduce her to his family and friends as his girlfriend. Amelia almost felt sorry for Robert. Almost. I'm guessing that's not going well. According to his attorney, Robert is trying to distance himself from her. He claims he wants to focus on rebuilding his life and possibly winning you back. Too late for that. She's not taking the hint. David Chin mentioned that she's been showing up at Robert's office uninvited and calling him constantly. She seems to think their affair was the beginning of a real relationship, not just a temporary diversion. The irony was perfect. Stella had probably expected to step seamlessly into Amelia's role as Robert's partner. Instead, she was discovering that a man who would cheat on his wife wasn't exactly relationship material. That weekend, Nina helped Amelia move back into her house. It felt strange being there without Robert, but also liberating. She immediately started making changes, beginning with the bedroom. The bed where Robert had rejected her over and over while thinking about another woman was the first thing to go. On Monday morning, Amelia was in her new office at home, working on a client presentation, when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she could see Stella Martinez standing on her porch, looking desperate and angry. Amelia considered not answering, but she was curious about what Stella wanted now that her affair had blown up both their lives. What do you want, Stella? Amelia asked through the closed door. I need to talk to you about Robert. There's nothing to discuss. Please. Just 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, Amelia opened the door. Stella looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed, she wasn't wearing makeup, and her clothes looked like she had slept in them. He won't see me, Stella said without preamble. He's changed his phone number and told his office not to let me in. I don't understand what happened. What happened is reality, Amelia said. You thought you were winning a prize, but you were actually destroying it. He told me he loved me. He said we were going to be together. He told you what you wanted to hear so you would keep sleeping with him. Just like he told me what I wanted to hear so I would keep supporting him financially and emotionally. Stella's face crumpled. But I gave up everything for him. I thought we had a future. You gave up nothing, Amelia said harshly. You were his secretary. You had no future to give up. You were broke, in debt, and looking for someone to rescue you financially. That's not true. Stella, I know everything about you. Your debt, your relationship history, your pattern of targeting successful older men. You weren't in love with Robert. You were in love with his money and status. And what were you in love with? The question caught Amelia off guard. She had been so focused on Robert's betrayal that she hadn't really examined her own feelings. I was in love with the man I thought he was, she said finally. Someone honest and loyal and committed to building a life together. But that man never existed. He was just a character Robert played when it suited him. Stella wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So what happens now? Now you find a new job and start over. And you learn not to get involved with married men. What if he changes his mind? What if he wants to try again with me? Amelia looked at this broken woman standing on her doorstep and felt a mixture of pity and disgust. Stella, listen to me carefully. Robert is about to lose 70% of his wealth, his reputation in the community, and possibly his business if word of your affair gets out. He's not going to want any reminders of what caused his downfall. You were never his future. You were just his temporary escape from responsibility. After Stella left, Amelia called James Patterson to make sure she had protection if either Robert or Stella tried to harass her further. But as the weeks passed, both of them seemed to disappear from her life completely. She heard through Nina that Robert had moved into a small apartment across town and was struggling to keep his business afloat after losing several major clients who had learned about the affair. Stella had been fired from her job and had moved back in with her parents in another state. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Amelia walked out of the courthouse as a single woman with a substantial settlement, a beautiful house, and her dignity intact. She had not only survived her husband's betrayal, she had triumphed over it. That evening she sat in her garden with a glass of wine, watching the sunset and planning her future. For the first time in years, that future belonged entirely to her. 6 months after her divorce was finalized, Amelia barely recognized her own life. The house that had once felt empty and sad was now her sanctuary, decorated exactly how she wanted it and filled with the energy of new possibilities. She had renovated the master bedroom, created a home office that actually functioned, and turned Robert's old study into a reading room lined with bookshelves. More importantly, she had renovated herself. The settlement money had given her the freedom to make choices based on what she wanted rather than what she needed. She had left her marketing job and started her own consultancy, taking on only clients whose work excited her. Without the stress of Robert's lies and rejections, her creativity had flourished, and her business was already more successful than she had dared to hope. She had also started therapy with Dr. Sarah Kim, a warm and insightful woman who specialized in helping people rebuild after betrayal. The sessions had been painful at first, forcing Amelia to examine not just Robert's behavior but her own patterns in the relationship. "You spent 5 years trying to be perfect for someone who was never going to appreciate you," Dr. Kim had observed during one session. "How much energy did you put into managing his emotions and making excuses for his behavior?" Too much energy, Amelia had realized. She had become so focused on being the ideal wife that she had lost touch with her own needs and desires. Robert's affair had been devastating, but it had also freed her from the exhausting job of trying to earn love from someone who was incapable of giving it. Now, on a sunny Saturday morning, Amelia was getting ready for a hiking trip with a group she had joined through a meetup app. The old Amelia would never have gone hiking alone with strangers, but the new Amelia was discovering that she was braver and more adventurous than she had ever realized. As she packed her water bottle and snacks, her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Robert called me yesterday. He wants your new phone number." Amelia had changed her number 3 months ago, tired of Robert's occasional attempts to contact her. She texted back, "What did you tell him?" "I told him to move on with his life and let you move on with yours." "Good. What did he want?" "He's apparently having some kind of crisis. His business is struggling, he's been seeing a therapist, and he claims he's finally understanding what he lost. He wants a chance to apologize properly and ask for your forgiveness." Amelia set down her phone and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was confident, healthy, and genuinely happy. She had built a new life that didn't include space for Robert's drama or manipulation. "He can keep his apology," she texted back. "I don't need it anymore." And she didn't. In the early days after the divorce, she had fantasized about Robert realizing his mistake and begging for her forgiveness. She had imagined the satisfaction of rejecting him the way he had rejected her. But now, the idea of talking to him at all felt exhausting and pointless. The hiking group met at a trailhead an hour outside the city. There were 8 people, ranging in age from late 20s to early 50s, all looking for adventure and new friendships. Amelia had been nervous about joining at first, but the group had welcomed her warmly, and she had quickly become a regular participant in their weekend activities. As they started up the trail, Amelia found herself walking beside Marcus, a divorce attorney who was about her age. They had been getting to know each other over the past few weeks, and she was surprised to find herself attracted to his quiet confidence and dry sense of humor. "How's the consultancy going?" he asked as they navigated a particularly rocky section of trail. "Better than expected," Amelia replied. "I just signed my biggest client yet, a nonprofit that wants to completely rebrand their fundraising approach." "That sounds challenging." "The best kind of challenging. It's work that actually matters, you know? I'm helping them tell stories that could change lives instead of just selling products nobody really needs." Marcus smiled. "It's amazing what happens when you get to choose your own path." They hiked in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the views and the physical challenge of the trail. Amelia thought about how different this felt from the activities she used to do with Robert. He had always been impatient with her pace, critical of her equipment choices, and more interested in reaching the destination than enjoying the journey. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed content to match her rhythm and share in the experience without trying to control or improve it. At the summit, the group stopped for lunch and photos. As Amelia looked out over the valley below, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for Robert's betrayal, she would never be grateful for that pain, but for the strength she had discovered in surviving it. Her phone buzzed with another text from Nina. "He also asked if you were seeing anyone new. I told him it was none of his business." Amelia glanced at Marcus, who was sharing his trail mix with an older woman who had forgotten to pack snacks. She wasn't ready for a serious relationship yet, but she was open to the possibility in a way she hadn't been since the divorce. Good answer, she texted back. My love life is definitely not his business anymore. On the drive home, Amelia thought about the journey she had taken over the past year. She had gone from being a woman who defined herself by her marriage to someone who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. The process had been painful, but it had also been transformative. She no longer checked her phone constantly hoping for attention from someone who didn't appreciate her. She no longer made herself smaller to avoid conflict with someone who wasn't worth the peace. She no longer tried to earn love from someone who had already chosen to give it elsewhere. Instead, she had learned to love herself enough to demand better from the people in her life. And for the first time in years, she was excited about what the future might bring. 1 year after her divorce was finalized, Amelia stood in the kitchen of her renovated house, preparing dinner for a small group of friends. The kitchen that had once felt like a lonely space where she ate meals by herself while Robert worked late was now filled with laughter and conversation. Nina was there with her new boyfriend, a doctor from her hospital who treated Amelia like the sister he had never had. James Patterson had become an unexpected friend, stopping by occasionally to check on her and share stories about his other cases. Even Trevor Johnson had been invited, along with his wife, who had become Amelia's accountant and helped her manage the financial windfall from her divorce settlement. And Marcus was there too. What had started as friendship during hiking trips had slowly evolved into something deeper over the past 6 months. He was patient with her healing process, understanding about her trust issues, and completely different from Robert in all the ways that mattered. This is amazing, Nina said, tasting Amelia's homemade pasta sauce. When did you learn to cook like this? Cooking classes, Amelia replied. Turns out I have a lot of hidden talents that I never had time to explore when I was trying to be the perfect wife. It was true. Over the past year, Amelia had discovered that she loved cooking, was surprisingly good at pottery, and had a natural talent for salsa dancing. She had traveled to 3 countries, learned basic Spanish, and read more books than she had in the previous 5 years combined. Most importantly, she had built a business that was both financially successful and personally fulfilling. Her marketing consultancy now employed 2 part-time contractors, and she was booked solid for the next 6 months with clients who valued her expertise and treated her with respect. As they sat down to dinner, Amelia looked around the table at the people who had become her chosen family. These were relationships built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and shared values. Nobody at this table had ever lied to her, betrayed her trust, or made her feel like she wasn't enough. I have an announcement, Marcus said, raising his wine glass. I've been offered a position with a law firm in Portland. It's a great opportunity, but it would mean moving across the country. Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She and Marcus had been taking things slowly, but she had started to imagine a future that included him. The idea of him moving away was painful, but she had learned not to make her happiness dependent on anyone else's choices. Congratulations, she said sincerely. That sounds like an amazing opportunity. Marcus smiled at her, and she could see something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It is amazing. But I was hoping I could convince a certain beautiful marketing consultant to consider expanding her business to the Pacific Northwest. The table erupted in excited chatter as everyone realized what Marcus was really asking. Amelia felt her cheeks warm with surprise and joy, but also a flutter of old anxiety. Marcus, she said quietly, are you asking me to move across the country for you? I'm asking if you'd consider building a life with me, he replied. Wherever that might be. Portland, here, or anywhere else that makes you happy. I know it's a big decision, and I know you need time to think about it. Nina grabbed Amelia's hand across the table. This is so exciting. You could have a fresh start in a beautiful new city. I already have a fresh start, Amelia said, looking around her renovated house and successful business. But maybe it's time for a new adventure. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Amelia and Marcus sat on her back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about the future. I don't want you to give up everything you've built here, Marcus said. Your business, your house, your life. I just want to be part of whatever you choose. A year ago, I thought my life was over, Amelia replied. I thought losing Robert meant losing everything that mattered. But now I know that everything that really matters, my strength, my talents, my capacity for love, goes with me wherever I go. Is that a yes? Amelia leaned over and kissed him, tasting wine and possibility on his lips. It's a yes to exploring the idea. A yes to seeing what we could build together. A yes to trusting that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes next. 6 months later, Amelia was packing the last boxes in her house, preparing for the move to Portland. She had sold the house to a young couple who reminded her of herself and Robert in the early days of their marriage. She hoped they would be luckier than she had been. Her consultancy had transitioned beautifully to remote work, and she had already lined up several clients in Portland. Marcus had found them a beautiful apartment with mountain views and a kitchen where she could continue perfecting her cooking skills. As she took one final walk through the empty house, Amelia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her first instinct was to ignore it, but something made her look. "Amelia, this is Robert. I know you changed your number, but I found it through a mutual friend. I heard you're moving to Portland and wanted to say goodbye. I also wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry for everything I did to you and to us. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." Amelia stared at the message for a long moment. A year ago, receiving an apology from Robert would have been important to her. Now, it felt like a message from a stranger about events that had happened to someone else. She deleted the message without responding and walked out of the house, closing the door on that chapter of her life forever. At the airport, Marcus was waiting with coffee and her favorite magazine. "Ready for the next adventure?" he asked, taking her carry-on bag. "More than ready," Amelia replied, taking his hand and walking toward their gate. As their plane lifted off, Amelia looked out the window at the city where she had been born, married, betrayed, and ultimately reborn. She felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. Robert's rejection had been the beginning of her real life, not the end of it. He had thought he was choosing someone better than his wife, but he had actually freed her to become someone better than she had ever imagined possible. The plane climbed higher, carrying Amelia toward a future that was entirely her own creation. She had been rejected 30 times, but on the 31st time she had done the rejecting. And that had made all the difference.